And also, there's other sciences that impinge on engineering and increasingly will impinge on engineering at some time during their 60-year career. I always tell incoming students that they will be doing this for 60 years. I had the privilege of retiring after only doing it for 42 years. They won't have that privilege. We will keep them alive till 100 and they will have to work till they're 80, so they better do something they enjoy for the 60 years in between. So in that time, biology is going to become much more important to engineering. For instance, climate change will or will not have changed our world. Engineers will or will not have mitigated the effect of climate change, and so on. So it seems to me they ought to be quite interested in things that are going to kill them or not over those next 60 years. I'm wrong, they're not interested in the slightest, but one would hope that they were interested. So that was what we were out to test in these three domain areas, really. So what were we going to do? This wasn't just idle interest. What was the purpose of asking these questions and trying to establish what the students know and can do? It was, we felt, threefold. We could use it on day one of year one. We could conduct the test and we could tell all those people who are going to be teaching them in year one, this particular cohort of students is strong here, is weak there, does know this, doesn't know that, as a sort of average picture. And that could be helpful to our first year teaching staff in selecting anecdotes, in pitching the level of things they do and so on, which then would relate to this year's intake, not to some general, this year's intake to their university, and not some more general. We might also learn more generally, is this a uniform pattern across our society, or is it just that everyone applying to Liverpool doesn't know what carbon capture means, or whatever. So we could ask questions locally, and by involving several universities, we could ask them generally across our society. So that was the second, that was the first motive. The second motive would be that after we've done this for 2 or 3 years, we might see patterns of change. So we've got the basis of a longitudinal study of what students understand and can do when they come in. But also that would inform our process of curriculum development as a School of Engineering. So this is one of the inputs into developing our curriculum, the changing nature of our arriving students. The third thing we might do is to help students who are thinking of applying for engineering. If we release this test before they reach us, they can have a feel for what sorts of things might be important to a future engineering career. And if we get the feedback right, they also could be given corrective measures, so they could be given material to go and study. Clearly you didn't know much about this, it might be a good idea if you looked this up before you arrived at university. So we could use it in those three ways. So we thought it was quite an important tool, and we managed to persuade someone to give us some money to do it, so we must have been halfway persuasive anyway. And so that's what we did. So what did we do? We devised a questionnaire, very difficult, and I'll say a bit more about that later. We eventually devised our own custom delivery system because we couldn't, this seems an incredible statement and this wasn't where we started, we couldn't find an easy delivery system that gave us what we needed. And what we needed was something that can be run anywhere, any university, in any country, with any set of hardware, any set of software. So that means effectively a web-based system. And also where the results could be extracted in a form useful to us by without any central intervention. So we wanted a system which Joe Bloggs in the University of wherever can download their results without me having to do it for them. Right? Otherwise it would be too cumbersome. So we built our own delivery system, and we eventually, this last year, and we ran this for the first time last September 2010, we homed in on 50 questions because the other constraint parameter we came up with was no one is going to want to dedicate more than an hour of their students' time to this activity. So the constraint has to be completable inside 1 hour. You can judge whether that was the proper constraint or not, but it was a constraint we used. And then the question topics ranged, there's rather too much data on this file, but you can read the paper on this slide. range from chemistry, general energy considerations, the workshop. What is this thing with a handle on one end and a cross-shaped piece at the end? It's a Phillips screwdriver. Right? So that level of understanding. Nuclear power. You know, can you spell fusion and fission? Question 1. Question 2, what's the difference? Question 3, are there any in your country? You know, that sort of understanding of huge engineering important things. How they work. We've got a diagram of some pulleys and so on. You know, why would you bother to put these two pulleys in here to load something? General knowledge about the environment, about evolution, about biology. A little bit about electronics and optics, office IT, can they use a spreadsheet, bit of general physics, sort of stuff that we've got the most concept questions on, bits of general engineering, properties of materials. Do you actually know what makes a metal different from a ceramic at the point you come into university in any way? So that was what we tried to cover, and maths as well. Now that's obviously a huge agenda. And in 50 questions, you don't get many questions on each of those headings. So we recognise that's a serious limitation to one of the things we're doing, is that we can't ask enough questions, really. Here's an example of a question. This was just a lever, a can, and a force being applied here, 2 to 1. So the downward force, labelled F, is half that exerted on the can, equal, double, or whatever. And this is important. We always put in a not sure option, because of course the point of this test, it is not in any way summative. The point of this test, it isn't really even formative. The point of the test is just to establish what do you guys know so that we can teach appropriately. It is purely for the benefit of the student body, and therefore I'll come back to this point. We try to persuade them this is not a test, you're not being marked. It doesn't actually matter to you individually if you get it right or wrong. We're trying to find the properties of this cohort of students in order to help you. And actually that's a very difficult message to get across. Because anytime you ask a question, the student mind seems to say, this is a test, there will be a mark, I must do well. So that's a sample question. We also collected other data at the same time. So while we were doing this, we collected details of the student's institution. Currently we just offered these 4 from a drop-down menu. We collected data on what type of engineering program they were registered for, right? Mechanical, civil, aero, whatever. We collected data about their type of highest prior qualification, because we were thinking if we had people who'd been apprentices and had come in from a practicing route, this would be different from people who had academic qualifications straight from school. And so we tried to filter that out. And we also picked out nationality very crudely. And in the UK context, this was UK, rest of Europe, and rest of world. And that's an easy thing to do because that differentiates the fees they pay. So it's quite easy to box people in those 3 boxes. It's not very subtle, but it was doable. And we also collected their email address, but we ended up not using it, and many of them put a false email address in. Interesting, there's the paranoia about we're inspecting them and testing them in some way, and they put in a false email address. That quite surprised me, I must admit. It happened. So the rubric said, it's not a test, it's not a test, it's not a test, and I've got a copy, if we've got time, of the rubric afterwards. You can see we said it's not a test about 100 times. Nobody believed us. Our experience is that some of our institutions did it in a captive way. They took the students in week 1 and they sat them in a big computer lab and they said, do it now, and I'm locking the door till you've done it and then you can leave. And others told them about it, told them it's not a test, please do it, go away and do it, and the return was about 30%. So in order to capture more data, we recommend locking them in a room as the practical solution. But we only captured 312 student data in 2010. We thought we'd capture 700. So that's the measure of how we fell short because we allowed the students not to do it, really. And this is a case where you do need a lot of data. If we're actually to separate the mechanical cohort from the civil cohort, which we couldn't do this time, we just didn't have enough examples of each to do it. So you need lots of data. And also, for purely practical reasons, we didn't give individual feedback to students in 2010. And that was simply the business that we hadn't worked out how to do it and implement that part of the system in that year. We think we will next time we run it in a few months' time. So that's what we did. We analysed the answers. We've looked at the percentage of correct answers. We've looked at the size of the not sure cohort for each question, and we've plotted those against their university, their prior qualification and their nationality, because we had sufficient numbers to at least render that reasonably meaningful. Any further minute division we couldn't really do. So between cohorts of engineering program students, we didn't have enough data. So some of the issues that emerge, it takes time to write good questions. We spent most of our project time arguing about the wording of the questions, which is very difficult to get right in the sense that the students can answer them, are not confused, and they tell you something about what they do and don't know. That is the intellectually hardest part of the project. Even 50 to 60 questions does not cover many topics. We do think they could take 60 questions. Of the type we set 50, and most students were finished before 40 minutes. So we thought the 60 is doable, so we're going to increase the number next year, just to capture more data. Students still think they're being assessed. Tailored supporting feedback is very difficult to deliver, but we're working on that. And staff lecturing the first year students do, of course, not necessarily take any notice of the results. We're doing it for their benefit, but of course they're not all project members. They don't necessarily buy in. In my institution there are maybe 10 of them, and only one of them's involved in the project, so the other 9 are at liberty to shrug their shoulders and walk away, which they of course do to most initiatives. That's it's slightly depressing, but it doesn't stop me. So our conclusions were that all the participating universities were very keen and are very keen to do it again, so they will be doing it again. There's a wide range of understanding out there. We got very high and very low hits. We got, I think 5 of the 50 questions had more than a 90% hit rate. About 5 or 6 had a less than 20% success rate. So that we hit some things that a lot of students didn't know, and we hit some things that a lot of students do know. And there was quite a lot in between. I'm perfectly happy with both those things. I don't think there is a school that says, and in fact he's standing at the back there, that says that if they get them all right, it's a worthless question. I don't agree, because I think that is both encouraging to them, they got something right, and also it doesn't mean that in 5 years' time, with different circumstances out there, they'll always get it right. So I think there's a reason for doing that. General knowledge, all the 4 student cohorts into the 4 universities were generally pretty similar. Now it's early days, but it looks as if, although those are 4 universities with different missions and different characteristics, they were attracting a student cohort that was quite similar in behaviour. General knowledge is generally weak. So even of science and engineering topics, generally weak. Overseas students with English as a second language performed about 10 percentage points lower. That is of some concern, of course, because I mean all of us take in students for whom the native language is not the one we're teaching, and I think that is of some concern. There were 10 percentage points lower on average. So that's just confirming something we might have suspected, but it was serious. So in the future, we're going to modify the questions to get them better. Clearly there was some confusion. We're going to add to that number. We are running it again in October 2011. And here's an important point, and one of the reasons I'm speaking here. If you want to join in, this is a completely open project. It will take us 15 minutes to add your institution to this website so that you could then use it. No costs, no anything. You will be able to access your cohort of data, and that can be done. So, and you can go and look at it. We're hoping next time we run to get more than 1,000 responses, which will enable us to do a much more sophisticated analysis of the data. And the project, we're trying to find ways to keep this going for many more years. So that's all I wanted to say. Here's the web address. You can actually go and try the test right now. Never mind with the rest of the session. You can take your laptop off and you can go and try the 50 questions at this web address now. I actually have spreadsheets with all the results in. You're actually welcome to the results from the 300 students we got last time. I'm not sure. You may find it's hard to get to grips with them because there's a lot of data in the spreadsheet. But we do have it, and it's publicly available because it's all anonymous. It's all anonymised, so there's no, you're not going to learn any student names. But it is quite interesting to have a look at that data. So that's end the message, John.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter. May have time for one question or two.
Yeah, as you stated, the 4 participating universities had similar results. You could also expect that over time, at least in a short period of time, that the results would also be similar. Which means that you don't actually have to test every new, to do the test every year, because you actually get a more generic or general result from it.
I think that's why we've got colleagues on the project team who say exactly what you've just said, that really doing this with any particular university once every 4 years, once every 5 years would probably tell you enough. I'm not encouraging that view because I want more data. Right? I want statistically more valid data, so I'm encouraging people to do it every year. It is, after all, only 1 year with your 1 hour with your entry cohort. It's not a big commitment, but I get more data centrally if everyone does it differently. But that's a selfish motive, I agree.
Just a quick one, Peter. I'm from New Zealand. And
never mind.
I know. I really would like to use this, but my cohort starts in February. Is there a chance you could?
Yeah, I mean, that's better still, because of course we'll be working towards the deadline of the last week of September, and we'll be struggling to get it complete by then. So by February it will actually be working very well.
So for the Southern Hemisphere guys, that would be really good.
Yeah, email me and
yeah, we'll do.
All we need from you is the name of your institution and the names of the programs of study that the students you're proposing to use it on.
Yeah.
Right? Because then we make drop-down menus which include your university and your program.
I'm from Australia, hello. Could you use something like this as an aptitude test for high school students?
Yeah, that's another suggestion that has been made. I think we'd have to look at the questions slightly more carefully and tune them a bit. But yes, I think you could.
I'm happy to share some stuff that we've done in Australia through some of the Australian technology.
Right.
Network universities.
Yeah.
That they charge to do the test.
Yeah, right. Oh.
$80 or something. And there's quite a lot of data there that maybe.
Let's talk.